Good day and welcome to the Corcept Therapeutics conference call. Today's call is being recorded. To signal for questions today, please press star 1. And at this time, I'd like to turn the call over to Charlie Robb. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Corcept's Chief Financial Officer. Today, we issued a press release announcing our financial results for the third quarter and providing a corporate update. The copy is available at corcept.com. Complete results will be available when we file our Form 10-Q with the SEC. Today's call is being recorded. A replay will be available through November 17, 2020 at 1-888-203-1112 in the United States and 1-719-457-0820 internationally. Passcode will be 6800706. Statements during this call, other than statements of historical fact, are forward-looking statements based on our plans and expectations that are subject to risks and uncertainties which might cause actual results to differ materially from those such statements express or imply. These risks and uncertainties include, but are not limited to, our ability to operate our business and achieve our goals during the COVID-19 pandemic and thereafter, including our ability to generate revenue and cash reserves sufficient to fund our commercial operations and development programs, the availability of competing treatments, including generic versions of Korlym, the initiation or outcome of litigation, our ability to obtain acceptable prices or adequate insurance coverage and reimbursement for Korlym, and risks related to the development of our product candidates, including their clinical attributes, regulatory approvals, mandates, oversight, and other requirements, and the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on our employees, consultants, and vendors, as well as on physicians, patients, insurers, regulators, and the practice of medicine generally. These and other risks are set forth in our SEC filings, which are available at our website and the SEC's website. On this call, forward-looking statements include those concerning our revenue guidance, cash flow and expected growth, our stock repurchase program and its intended funding sources, the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on our commercial operations, financial performance, clinical development programs, physicians, payers, and patients, and expectations regarding our financial performance and clinical development program after the COVID-19 pandemic brought under control, physician awareness of hypercortisolism and the selection of Korlym as the optimum medical treatment, the timing, cost, and outcome of litigation, including our lawsuits against Teva Pharmaceuticals and Sun Pharmaceuticals, and Teva's challenge to the validity of one of our patents for the patent trial and appeals board, scope and protective power of our intellectual property, the benefits of orphan drug designation, the progress, enrollment, timing, design, and results of our clinical trials, and the clinical and commercial attributes of Korlym, Exicorilant, Miricorilant, and our other selective cortisol modulators. We disclaim any intention or duty to update forward-looking statements. Revenue for the third quarter was $86.3 million, a 6% increase from the third quarter of 2019. Third quarter GAAP net income was $21.6 million compared to $26.3 million in the same period last year. Excluding non-cash expenses related to stock-based compensation and utilization of deferred tax assets, together with related income tax effects, non-GAAP net income in the third quarter was $30 million compared to $37.8 million in the third quarter of 2019. Our cash and investments were $444.2 million in the period, an increase of $34.7 million from June. All consideration of our strong financial position and prospects, our board of directors has approved the program running through September 30th, 2021 to repurchase up to $200 million of our common stock. We will determine the timing and size of any repurchases based on market conditions, our stock price, and other factors. We believe revenue from our Cushing's syndrome business, together with our cash on hand, will be sufficient to fund our commercial activities in our current and planned clinical development and drug discovery programs, as well as our program to repurchase $200 million of our common stock. Now, a brief legal update. In March 2018, we sued Teva Pharmaceuticals in federal district court to stop it from marketing a generic version of Korlym in violation of our patents. Our lawsuit stayed final FDA approval of Teva's proposed product for 30 months, a period which ended on August 1st. Discovery is underway. Originally, the trial was set to begin February 2nd, 2021. Last month, the court vacated that date and ordered the parties to complete trial preparations by March 17th, 2021. A new trial date has not been set. It could take place any time after March 17th. Teva has also challenged the validity of one of our patents, the 214 patent, in a proceeding known as a post-grant review, or PGR, before the U.S. Patent Office's Patent Trial and Appeals Board, or PTAB. As many of you know, oral argument in this matter was heard on September 2nd. We expect the PTAB to produce its decision on or about November 19th. The losing party may appeal to the Federal Circuit Court of Appeals, during which time the patent will remain. It is important to note that Teva is barred from challenging the validity of the 214 patent in the district court case using arguments it raised or could have raised in the PGR. While Teva's attorneys will undoubtedly try to do so anyway, the rules are intended to prevent Teva from getting its second bite at that apple. In any event, appeals to the Federal Circuit usually take about 12 to 16 months to resolve. Such an appeal takes place as soon as we expect definitive resolution of the PGR is the fourth quarter of 2021. Sun Pharmaceuticals is also seeking to market generic Korlym. Our lawsuit against Sun to save final FDA approval of Sun's proposed product so the earlier December 8, 2021, that is December 8th of next year, or a decision by the district court that the patents we have asserted against Sun are invalid, unenforceable, or not infringed. Our dispute with Sun is separate from our litigation against Teva and is following its own timeline. The Markman hearing in the Sun case was set for November of this year, but that date has been vacated and a new date has not been entered. In addition, no trial date has been set. Predicting the timing of any district court litigation is difficult, and the possibility of delays caused by the COVID-19 pandemic compounds the problem. The court has vacated our original trial date with Teva, but has not set a new one. Whenever this trial takes place, we will be ready. We look forward to putting our case before the judge. I will now turn the call over to Dr. Corcept, our Chief Executive Officer. John?
Thank you, Charlie. The challenge posed by the COVID-19 pandemic underscored just how fortunate Corcept is to have built a stable commercial business profitable enough to fund our increasingly broader and advanced clinical development programs. We are currently testing molecules from our portfolio of proprietary selective cortisol modulators in 2 phase 3 Cushing's syndrome trials, 1 phase 3, 1 phase 2, and 2 phase 1b oncology trials, and 2, soon to be 3, phase 2 trials in metabolic disorders. These trials will generate important data next year and in 2022, even as additional novel molecules enter development. I know of no other company our size that combines commercial success with such diverse and promising clinical activities. I hardly need to tell you that these are difficult times for everyone. The COVID-19 pandemic has caused many individuals, including physicians and patients, to protect themselves from infection, most commonly by limiting their exposure to other people. Patients are reluctant to leave their homes, even to see their physician. Many medical practices have barred or sharply limited in-person visits by commercial representatives. This reduction in face-to-face interactions makes every aspect of medical care more difficult, especially for a complex, serious condition such as Cushing's syndrome. We are doing what we can to help. Our commercial team has devised ways to support physicians by video and teleconference. Physicians have increased their use of telemedicine and have adapted their in-office procedures to reduce the risk of infection. However, these measures are imperfect substitutes for face-to-face medical care. Diagnosing and treating patients with Cushing's syndrome requires multiple in-person interactions between patients and physicians. Nonetheless, patients who are using Korlym before the pandemic are highly motivated to continue to use it. Despite the current pandemic-caused obstacles, we continue to enroll new patients and add to our roster of Korlym prescribers, albeit at a muted pace, for one reason. Korlym is an effective treatment that has greatly improved the lives of many patients with Cushing's syndrome, a life-threatening chronic illness. Pandemic-related changes in medical practice and patient behavior modestly reduced our revenues this quarter, but the foundation of our business, an effective medication promoted by a dedicated commercial team that puts the interests of patients first, remains rock solid and poised to support significant growth once conditions improve. As I have said on prior calls, there are many patients who could benefit from Korlym who have not yet received it. Our planned successor to Korlym, relacorilant, has the potential to benefit many more. The stock repurchase program we announced today reflects our board's confidence in the fundamental strength of our business. The most important use of our cash is to fully fund our commercial operations and our increasingly broad clinical development programs. With those needs met, our stock repurchase program allows us to purchase our stock when we think it is undervalued, like we think it is now. As many of you know, we are evaluating relacorilant, our planned successor to Korlym, for patients with Cushing's syndrome, in 2 phase 3 trials. Relacorilant is a selective cortisol modulator. Like Korlym, it achieves its effect by competing with cortisol and the glucocorticoid receptor, PR for short. Unlike Korlym, it does not bind to the progesterone receptor, PL, which means it does not cause off-target effects, including termination of pregnancy, endometrial thickening, vaginal bleeding caused by activity of that receptor. By a different mechanism, relacorilant also does not appear to cause hypokalemia, low potassium, a serious side effect experienced by 44% of patients in Korlym's pivotal trial. Korlym-induced hypokalemia is a leading cause of Korlym discontinuation. Relacorilant's phase 2 clinical data was clearly positive. Patients experienced meaningful improvements in hypertension and glucose control, as well as in a variety of other signs and symptoms of Cushing's syndrome. There were no relacorilant-induced instances of endometrial thickening, vaginal bleeding, and also no drug-induced hypokalemia. Our poster presenting these results can be found at the Investors/Past Events tab of our website. We expect relacorilant's phase 3 GRACE trial to serve as the basis for our NDA submission in Cushing's syndrome. GRACE continues to enroll patients with any etiology of Cushing's syndrome, although, as we had stated before, the pandemic has slowed its pace. We expect to submit our NDA in the second quarter of 2022. Last quarter, we dosed the first patient in relacorilant's second phase 3 trial in patients with Cushing's syndrome, the GRADIENT trial. GRADIENT is specifically studying relacorilant's effects in patients whose Cushing's syndrome is caused by an adrenal adenoma or adrenal hyperplasia. Patients with this etiology of Cushing's syndrome often experience a less rapid decline, but ultimately their health outcomes are poor. GRADIENT is the first controlled study in patients with this type of Cushing's syndrome. We expect its findings will contribute to the optimal treatment of these patients. Participants in GRADIENT will receive either relacorilant or placebo for 22 weeks. The primary endpoints are statistically significant improvements in hypertension or glucose metabolism. All of the other common manifestations of Cushing's syndrome will also be measured. Planned enrollment is 130 patients at sites in the United States and Europe. Many of the investigators who are participating in GRACE will also participate in GRADIENT. You can find our poster presentation of GRADIENT's design at the Research and Pipeline/Publications tab of our website. Our Oncology Program originated in theories postulated by investigators at the University of Chicago more than 10 years ago. It now consists of 4 clinical trials, 2 of which will produce data in the first half of next year. Our program is examining each of the 3 mechanisms by which cortisol modulation may help treat patients with solid tumors. Cortisol suppresses apoptosis, the programmed cell death chemotherapy is intended to induce. There is compelling preclinical and clinical data suggesting that relacorilant can help chemotherapy reach its full potential by blunting cortisol's anti-apoptotic effect. We are testing this hypothesis in patients with metastatic ovarian cancer and metastatic pancreatic cancer. We initiated these trials following encouraging results in our phase 1/2 trial of relacorilant combined with nab-paclitaxel, Celgene's drug, Abraxane. Tumors in 7 of 25 patients with metastatic pancreatic cancer and in 5 of 11 patients with platinum-resistant ovarian cancer either shrank or stopped growing for 16 weeks or longer. 2 patients with metastatic pancreatic cancer exhibited tumor shrinkage for 65 weeks. All patients had experienced disease progression during multiple prior lines of chemotherapy, including treatment with taxane. We presented these results at ASCO in 2019. You can find our poster at the Research and Pipeline/Publication page of our website. In August, we began enrolling patients in Reliance, an 80-patient open-label phase 3 trial of relacorilant plus nab-paclitaxel in patients with metastatic pancreatic cancer. Each patient will receive relacorilant plus nab-paclitaxel. The primary endpoint is objective response rate, with secondary endpoints including progression-free survival and duration of response. We expect to conduct an analysis of results in Reliant's first 40 patients in the first half of 2021. The expected response rate to nab-paclitaxel monotherapy in patients with metastatic pancreatic cancer is 0. We believe sufficiently positive results in Reliant to support accelerated approval. In July, we completed enrollment in our controlled phase 2 trial in patients with advanced ovarian cancer. 178 patients were randomized to receive nab-paclitaxel and either continuous dosing of relacorilant, intermittent dosing of relacorilant, or placebo. The primary endpoint is progression-free survival, with secondary endpoints including objective response rate and duration of response. We expect results from the study in the first half of next year. Cortisol activation produces inflammation and suppresses the immune system, which is why synthetic cortisols are used to treat autoimmune and inflammatory disorders such as rheumatoid arthritis, inflammatory bowel disease, and multiple sclerosis. Unfortunately, by suppressing the immune system, cortisol also diminishes the effectiveness of immunotherapy in treating patients with solid tumors. In September, we initiated an open-label phase 1b trial of relacorilant plus the PD-1 checkpoint inhibitor pembrolizumab, Orkstra, Keytruda, in patients with advanced adrenal cancer whose tumors produce excess cortisol. These patients suffer the effects of adrenal cancer and Cushing's syndrome, a very bad combination. We believe that cortisol excess may also interact and counteract the intended effect of pembrolizumab, which is rarely effective as monotherapy in these patients. Our trial is evaluating whether relacorilant can treat these patients' Cushing's syndrome by reducing the effects of excess cortisol activity and by reversing cortisol-induced immune suppression, also allow pembrolizumab to achieve its full cancer-killing effect. Our posters at this year's ASCO and AACR meetings present preclinical and clinical biomarker data supporting our hypothesis. You can review them at Research and Pipeline/Publications tab of our website. We plan to enroll 20 patients in this trial at 5 sites in the United States. The primary endpoint is objective response rate, with secondary endpoints including progression-free survival and duration of response. Investigators at the University of Chicago have shown that cortisol stimulates tumor growth in patients with castration-resistant prostate cancer, finding that was confirmed by researchers at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. This work explains why patients treated with a widely prescribed androgen receptor antagonist enzalutamide eventually experience renewed tumor growth. Deprived of androgen stimulation, their tumors often utilize cortisol as a growth pathway. Our hypothesis is that adding a cortisol modulator to androgen deprivation therapy will close this tumor escape route. We are conducting a phase 1b trial of our selective cortisol modulator, ensacorilant, combined with enzalutamide in patients with castration-resistant prostate cancer, and expect to identify a dose regimen suitable for advancing to a larger controlled study in the first quarter of 2021. I will conclude with an update of our program in metabolic diseases. In the United States, 6 million people take antipsychotic medications such as olanzapine, Eli Lilly drug Zyprexa, and risperidone, J&J's Risperdal, treat illnesses such as schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and major depression. While these drugs are very effective, they exact steep price in the form of rapid and sustained weight gain, cardiovascular disease, and other metabolic disturbances. Patients can gain more than 50 pounds, and their life expectancy is decreased on average by 20 years, due in part to excess cardiovascular events such as heart attacks and strokes. We have completed 3 double-blind placebo-controlled clinical trials in healthy subjects in which co-administration of a cortisol modulator reduced these dangerous metabolic adverse effects. 2 of these trials used mifepristone, the active ingredient in Korlym. Our positive results were published in the journals Advances in Therapy and Obesity in 2009 and 2010. Unfortunately, Korlym, which shares its active ingredient with the abortion pill, cannot be advanced for such a prevalent disorder. Miricorilant, by contrast, is not the abortion pill and can be advanced for this use. Last quarter, we completed a trial in which healthy subjects received olanzapine and either 600 milligrams of miricorilant, 900 milligrams of miricorilant, or placebo for 14 days. Study participants who received miricorilant gained significantly less weight than those who received placebo. In addition, they exhibited a smaller increase in triglycerides and the liver enzymes AST and ALT, markers of liver damage that rise at the onset of olanzapine therapy. We plan to publish the full results of this study next year. We are currently conducting 2 double-blind, placebo-controlled phase 2 trials of miricorilant to patients with schizophrenia. The first, Gratitude, is evaluating whether miricorilant can reverse recent antipsychotic-induced weight gain. 100 patients will receive, in addition to their established dose of antipsychotic medication, either 600 milligrams of miricorilant or placebo for 12 weeks. Gratitude is being conducted at approximately 20 centers across the United States. During the third quarter, we initiated Gratitude 2, a randomized double-blind placebo-controlled phase 2 trial of miricorilant to treat long-standing antipsychotic-induced weight gain. 150 patients with schizophrenia will continue to receive their established dose of antipsychotic medication, plus either 600 milligrams or 900 milligrams of miricorilant or placebo for 26 weeks. The primary endpoint is reduction in body weight. Gratitude 2 will be conducted at 35 centers in the United States. In animal models, miricorilant also prevents and reverses fatty liver and liver fibrosis, precursors of non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, or NASH, serious liver disorder that affects millions of patients. Later this month, we plan to start a 120-patient, double-blind, placebo-controlled phase 2 trial of miricorilant to patients with NASH. Corcept's third quarter results were blunted because of pandemic-related public health measures and related changes in physician and patient behavior. That being said, our commercial business is remarkably stable and is poised to resume its growth once the pandemic subsides. We expect to finish the year within the bounds of our original pre-pandemic revenue guidance, which we narrowed to a range of $355 to $365 million. Our cash and investments grew by $34.7 million to $442.2 million. We announced a program to repurchase up to $200 million of our common stock. Our clinical program continues to broaden and will produce significant data in 2021 and 2022. Enrollment is underway in 2 phase 3 trials of relacorilant, our planned successor in Cushing's syndrome. We expect the GRACE trial to provide the basis for our NDA submission in the second quarter of 2022. Our second trial, Radiant, is evaluating relacorilant in patients with Cushing's syndrome of adrenal origin. We are confident it will help physicians better understand and treat this less studied etiology of the disease. Data from the first 40 patients in our phase 3 Reliant trial of relacorilant plus nab-paclitaxel in patients with metastatic pancreatic cancer will be available in the first half of next year. Sufficiently positive results from Reliant will likely qualify relacorilant for accelerated approval. Our controlled phase 2 trial of relacorilant plus nab-paclitaxel in patients with metastatic ovarian cancer will also produce results in the first half of 2021. Last month, we initiated a 20-patient open-label phase 1b trial of relacorilant combined with a PD-1 checkpoint inhibitor and pembrolizumab to treat patients with advanced adrenal cancer and cortisol excess. Finally, in the first quarter of next year, we expect to select the optimum dose of hexacorilant to advance in combination with enzalutamide in a controlled phase 2 trial of patients with castration-resistant prostate cancer. Our program in metabolic diseases also made significant gains. Enrollment and site activation continue in Gratitude, our double-blind placebo-controlled phase 2 trial of miricorilant to reduce recent antipsychotic-induced weight gain. And we have begun enrollment in Gratitude 2, a double-blind placebo-controlled phase 2 trial of miricorilant in patients with long-standing antipsychotic-induced weight gain. We expect to start a double-blind placebo-controlled phase 2 trial of miricorilant in patients with NASH later this month. I'll stop here for questions.
Thank you.
If you would like to ask a question, please press star 1 on your telephone keypad. And if you're on speakerphone, please make sure that your mute function is turned off to allow your signal to reach our equipment. Again, that is star 1 for questions. We'll pause just a moment so that everyone has an opportunity to signal for questions. And we will go to our first question from, at this time, our first question will come from Tazeen Ahmad of Bank of America.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for taking my questions. A couple for me. So I guess, Joe, if you guys end up winning the PGR and let's say also the district court case and you do in that event have no competition for Korlym for several years, and you also plan on launching relacorilant in Cushing's, how do you think that both of those drugs could coexist? Is there a subset of the population that might be better served with one drug over the other, or is it your view that over time sales for Korlym would fade as there's more pickup for relacorilant?
Hey, Tazeen, thanks. This is Charlie. So I'll answer the first part of the question, and maybe we'll just talk about the relative use of the two drugs. But I just want to say, if we win the district court case, it's true, we'll have a patent that has protected Korlym and would protect Korlym through 2037. So it's 17 years of additional protection. So it would be quite a long time to make your question a very pertinent one. But I just want to make it clear to folks that if we have that kind of legal success you described, that is the one we have with Korlym after that. But as to the role of relacorilant and Korlym, Joe, you want to address that?
Sure, Charlie. Thanks for the question, Tazeen. Just to be completely straightforward about it, Tazeen, I think that relacorilant is a clearly superior medication to Korlym if it pans out in the way it has so far. I think removing its progesterone-related side effects, and now as we find out, drug-induced hypothermia, it's my expectation that over time, relacorilant will entirely replace Korlym as the first choice drug.
Okay. And do you think that would happen immediately, or would that be more of a gradual switchover?
Yeah, it's a little hard to say, of course, at this point, but my expectation is that it will be sooner rather than later.
Okay, thank you. And then maybe one question, if I may, on a pipeline program for NASH. It seems like there are many mechanisms of action that are being explored by many different companies, and I was curious, it's very early, but how do you think your particular approach could be differentiated either in terms of efficacy and or safety in that population? Thanks.
I'd like to just, because I have him here, our Chief Medical Officer, Andreas Grauer, and I think he'll take your question, Tazeen.
Jim, thanks so much for the question. It's a great one, and we wish we had the answer already. We've seen very promising data in this particular disease model and this clinical model. The first thing I want to say is the mechanism is totally different from how the other drugs that are in development are addressing NASH. So whether it is superior in efficacy, that's why we're doing a concept study now as a first step. And the safety profile will obviously also emerge once we have transition. So our hopes are high that this will work great.
I'd like to just add just sort of how we got here. What we've noticed with patients who are treated with Korlym, that in at least one measure, not specifically NASH, but people who had long-standing elevation in liver enzymes due to liver irritation over a period of time, their enzymes often normalized. And that's what really started us on the path with relacorilant to the preclinical testing that Andreas has described. And we're really looking forward to see if that translates to human effects. So we'll talk to you in the future about it.
I see. Okay. And do you have a sense of when we would be able to see data from that program?
On the NASH program, Andreas?
Yeah, well, so we're just getting started. We're hoping to start screening like imminently, basically, and we're hoping to have data in about 18 months.
Okay, great. Thank you for the questions.
And we'll move next to a question from Matt Kaplan of Ladenburg Thalmann.
Hi, good afternoon, guys, and thanks for taking the question. Just a few questions with respect to maybe digging into the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the progress with the GRACE studies and the gradient, phase 3 study as well. What are you seeing there in terms of challenges?
Matt, it's a little bit choppy to hear you. So, were you asking the question in regard to our ongoing business with Corlin or with the GRACE study?
No, in terms of the ongoing GRACE study and gradient studies, the impact of COVID-19 on those programs.
Andreas, please.
Sure. Well, I mean, the COVID pandemic is tough to deal with for everybody. But we are still working on meeting our timeline, which laid out in his remarks, and are working on filing by Q2.
I just remind you, just for those who haven't, is that at the beginning of the pandemic, and we really began to notice what was in fact going on at that point too, we did extend the timeline to the point where it is right now, but we have not changed it since that point in time.
Okay, that's helpful. Thanks. And then in terms of, I guess maybe a question for Charlie, you kind of portrayed kind of a best case scenario of 2037 for if everything goes in your direction with the litigation with Teva and Sun. Can you help bracket that and help us understand in terms of maybe a base case scenario in terms of how things could progress and the other end of that spectrum when you could potentially see a generic competition, the way things are playing out right now?
Well, the 2037 date I mentioned is just the date of kind of our longest running patent and the one also that's being challenged now for PGR that we will, as I mentioned, have an important decision about in a couple of weeks in the patent office. So that's where the 2037 date runs to. And as for sort of bracketing it, that's really kind of hard to do. We have a patent. If we prevail, we have a patent that runs through 2037. There's no bracketing of that. That's just the date. Typically, these cases settle if they are going to settle. Maybe coming about here, by giving the generic company some amount of time earlier than that longest running patent. But that's just sort of the way the averages work. It doesn't necessarily seem to happen here. We're feeling very good about our case right now. We'll see what happens. But really, a bracket is not really anything I can offer. I do have one end of it that's 2037, and we'll have to see if there's any other date there.
Okay. That's helpful. Thanks. And then just in terms of a pipeline question, if I may, the Reliant phase 3 study, you mentioned that data from the first half of the study, the first 40 patients, would be available in the first half of 21. I guess, what should we be looking for in terms of, with respect to the primary endpoint, objective response rate? Is that the data we're going to see in the first half, in the first 40 patients?
The interim analysis that we're planning from this first half will basically give us a first look at the primary endpoint. It's at that point not powered to make any definitive conclusions, but it will give us an indication on where we are and whether we're tracking towards success, and it will obviously give us give us encouragement to continue the trial at a fast pace.
And what I'll just add, sorry, go ahead, please.
Yeah, just in terms of maybe you can help us understand what objective response rate would be deemed as successful. I guess pancreatic cancer is, obviously a very difficult indication.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to add a little bit of context, right? This is a trial in patients with third line or more pancreatic cancer. So they're really very, very sick people. And currently the response for most treatments that can be tried in these patients is basically zero. So any response would probably be improvement for these patients. The bar for accelerated approval at the FDA is a significant bar. And in their own words, they like to be loud by the results, and that's obviously somewhat of a subjective statement. We feel if we had a 20% response rate, everybody would be wowed by that. If it is less than that, but still better than what current therapies deliver, then we'll have to have a careful look at the data and see how strong they are.
Okay. Thank you very much, and congrats on the progress.
And we'll go to our next question from Roger Song of Jefferies.
Great. Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for taking my question. Maybe the first one goes into the Cushing syndrome franchise. Because we see both of two potential new steroidogenesis inhibitor. Both of them are guide like a 300 to 400 million peak sales for Cushing syndrome. And given Colin already tracking this kind of a range, and how would you kind of reconcile this to your expectations for your Cushing syndrome franchise?
I apologize, but really, as you were breaking up, and we caught probably 50% of what you were saying. Could you please repeat it? I'm sorry to make you do that, but I want to make sure that we answer the question you want to answer. Now we're getting 0% of what you're saying.
Roger, we can't hear you.
Maybe Roger can begin to see that. The next question.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yeah, now we can. Have that. Yeah.
Okay, great. Sorry. So I just tried to understand this. So we have two new steroidogenesis inhibitor. They are kind of guiding 300 to 400 million peak sales for Cushing syndrome. And given Colin already tracking this range, and how do you reconcile this to your expectation for the Cushing syndrome franchise for Colin and the potential kind of relacorilant?
Yeah, Roger, this is Sean Dominguez, I'm the Chief Commercial Officer. So just to clarify, I think you're asking what has the Isturisa is protesting with a $400 million market, and what has the impact into our business? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So specifically, I would say right now there's been minimal impact with the approval of Isturisa. I just want to point out a couple of quick things to those on the call. Isturisa is a medication that has a mechanism of action that's very similar to a low-price medication, Repurchase, that is sometimes used off-label to treat Cushing's disease. And the other important point here is that Isturisa is indicated for Cushing's disease and not the broader Cushing's syndrome spectrum or all etiologies of Cushing's syndrome.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Okay, maybe next question for the Xcorilant. So we see that you're going to select the dosing next quarter, the first quarter next year. And just curious, what needs to be done to select a dose? And I believe the last quarter you guided towards the end of this year. So I'm just curious what delays for the dosing selection.
We have restarted the next segment of our phase 1/B trial, which will hopefully lead us to a dose for hexacolin. We started the trial in the times of COVID. It's taken a little longer than we were hoping it would, but the trial's up and running and recruiting patients, and we hope as a result of that we will be able to make the decision. I also want to remind people that we actually have two parallel trials going. One that we're running ourselves, which is the hexacolin trial that you just mentioned, and then in collaboration with the University of Chicago, there is an investigator-sponsored trial with relacorilant in a very similar patient population of prostate cancer patients. And by the end of first quarter, we hope to have results of both of those trials to be able to make a decision on what we want to move forward.
Got it. Okay, that's fair. Okay, great. Thank you. That's all my questions. Sorry for the connection.
Thank you, Rod. Thank you, Rod.
And we'll move to our next question from Ramakant of H.C. Wainwright.
Thank you. I just want to check and see if you guys can hear my voice clearly, because I've been having a very choppy evening.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
I think we can.
Okay. So just trying to understand the third quarter, the revenue run, and also trying to understand the guidance that you put out. So based on your guidance, if I take the midpoint, you're expecting approximately about 6% growth from a third quarter base. So just trying to understand the confidence for that number, and is there a possibility, to do closer to your previous guidance, the upper end of your previous guidance?
Before you start, I didn't get a chance to. I always like to introduce Sean McDuke, who's our Chief Commercial Officer, and let him answer that question.
Yeah, thanks for the question. And I'm going to answer it in two parts. I first want to talk about sort of what's happened over the pandemic, and then we'll talk a little bit about sort of expectations for Q4. So there are two key drivers to our revenue, two key components. One is patient retention, and then the second is new patient acquisition. And during this COVID window, we've done well retaining patients, but acquiring new patients has been challenging. And Joe talked about this during the opening remarks. So there's three key factors, I think, that have impacted us over the last 6 months. And the first is very state by state, but physicians have moved to more of a hybrid model of in-person and telemedicine appointments, and they're not seeing patients with the same frequency that they have previously in pre-pandemic. So screening and diagnosis rates are down, which of course impacts the patient's ability to get diagnosed, to then get treated, and then to get to an optimal treatment regimen. So that's point one. Point two, even if patients are able to go see their physicians or to go get labs, they've been very reluctant to do so. And these are very, very sick patients, and due to pre-existing conditions and fear of the virus, they haven't been done. And the third piece is that although practices and health systems have been open to seeing patients, many have been closed to the pharmaceutical industry, which impacts our clinical specialists' ability to educate new potential prescribers. So as Joe mentioned, we've moved to virtual technology platforms, and we're doing what we can and trying new things to reach physicians when in-person interaction is not feasible. So in terms of Q4, it takes time for a patient to be diagnosed. It takes time for a patient to potentially be put on Korlym, and then it takes time for them to get to an optimal dose where we ultimately see a business impact. So there's a lag on that's a few months. And I already mentioned there was definitely a significant slowdown of physician interaction in Q2. when everything sort of shut down with the onset of COVID-19. And that slowdown impacted Q3. Now, the change is that things have opened up somewhat in the third quarter. There was an increase in activity, and I expect that will benefit our fourth quarter.
Okay. Thank you for that. The next question is on the pancreatic cancer trial. I understand from your initial comments that you have the data from first 40 patients in the first quarter of 21. Could you give us an idea of when you could complete this study, and the data from this study, if positive, is that enough to file for an approval, or do you need to do another study?
Well, so first, I think we said first half.
I meant first quarter 21.
Yeah, but I think we said first half of 21 for when we will have the data on that study. And again, there's some interim analysis of 40 patients currently. The current trial design requires us to enroll 80 patients, so it would be a doubling of that size, and it obviously depends on the speed of enrollment that we would have. But what we currently think is that we should have the data and about, like for the overall trial, about 9 to 12 months later.
And as an answer to your second question, RK, yes, we think that with sufficient results, that study would be the one the FDA would accept for an NDA. So cross our fingers. It's obviously result dependent, but this is a very ill group of patients with really not much else to help them. And the FDA is pretty interested, but it's on us to see if our drug produces acceptable results.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks for taking the questions.
And we'll go to Ellen Leon of Firewatch News.
Hi, Joe. Hi, Charlie, and Dee to Andreas and Sean. I appreciate that it's on election day, so I won't ask you if you voted and who for.
Yes. Yes, me.
Let me ask you. Actually, I'll first go over something over the gratitude trials, and you briefly talked about this about 6 months ago. But which gratitude trial has a more difficult enrollment proposition among investigators? And if so, when you comment, can you compare the trial enrollment execution of the two, Gratitude 1 versus Gratitude 2? And let me slip in a second question. I'm sorry to do that. What's the endpoint goal for Gratitude 1? Because I remember the healthy normal trial that you were just looking for a trend rather than statistical significance. I want to set expectations. You have a low dose with the old formulation, and now you got a little bit of a bar because you're dealing with obese patients. So, yep.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So first of all, the Gratitude 1 trial is enrolling patients with recent weight gain versus the Gratitude 2 trial, which has been enrolling patients with long-time weight gain. And the recent weight gain is obviously somewhat harder to document, and so that trial is more difficult to enroll. We started it earlier, so we think we will probably get the results for both trials at about the same time, around Q2 2022. And the trial is powered to detect a 5% weight, 5% reduction in weight. Again, we're obviously relatively early in this program, but if you compare it to the healthy volunteer trials, you have to keep in mind that healthy volunteers, these were 2-week trials. This is a 3-month trial. So the extent of effect will obviously be affected by the duration of treatment.
And that's exactly right. The only thing I'd add to that, Alan, is just to your point, we we were really looking in the phase 1 trial in healthy volunteers to see if the medication was active, really very active in animals, and mifepristone, had shown statistically significant results also in the healthy volunteer study of similar character, 2 weeks of treatment. And we were just really very pleasantly surprised to see that we got statistically significant results with miricorilant as well. Now, all that said, Andreas has described to you a study that's really different. It's in patients. It's about weight reduction as opposed to prevention of weight gain. So we're optimistic because we think this drug is really very potent as we think that it is. But these are the first 2 studies that we've run to actually test that hypothesis in patients on weight reduction.
Yeah, the 2 trials are really quite a contrast for a number of reasons. Let me ask you about the adrenal cancer trial, and this is really a 1,000-foot view question. I was pleasantly surprised at going to Europe, United States, and Israel. The trial is global. How does that dovetail with how you envision your eventual Cushing's program of expansion?
Alan, I'm not really sure I follow your question. But I think I have, but you actually, if you wouldn't mind, you actually give me an opportunity to present an important point that you may remember because you followed Corcept for a long time, but others may not, which is that Korlym is approved for all forms of Cushing's syndrome, including patients with adrenal cancer. Now, what we noted in patients with adrenal cancer is that it really was very meaningful in improving their Cushing's syndrome. But as far as we could tell, it really did not do anything in particular, neither better nor worse than their cancer, although their quality of life actually clearly improved. The studies that we're doing with relacorilant, GRACE, and GREEN are actually exclude patients with adrenal cancer. And so we're not testing that group there. But we think that for the same reason, the reason we got here is we think we can really offer clinical benefit in Cushing's syndrome for patients that have adrenal cancer. The really interesting thing about it is what I talked about in my opening remarks is whether it first stems from an observation. And the observation was immunotherapy, which is fantastic in lots of other cancers, does not seem to really work at all in patients who have adrenal cancer whose tumors are producing cortisol. And that's about half the patients who have adrenal tumors. And so what we really were hoping to see is, in addition to the benefit we think we can provide in Cushing's syndrome, which is really a meaningful benefit, can we also provide benefit in terms of tumor reduction and improvement in their oncologic situation? We're very excited to try it. Our investigators are very excited to try that. And, it seemed like a very logical place for us to start because we thought we could at least know we can provide a benefit of some kind to these patients. Where that leads, I don't know, but we're very excited to really see what this first combination of immunotherapy and GR antagonism, GR modulation actually leads to.
And one last question. I have to ask this. You had CORT 113176 in phase 1, and the trial, from what I understand, is completed. How was it, and how do you intend to take it forward at this point, or where, if at all, will results be presented?
All right. So first, Alan, as the guy who knows more about Corcept than some of the worried people at Corcept, thank you for bringing up CORT 113176. This is still a very early stage compound. It's just in phase 1 at this point in time. But since we are really we're covering academics here, and we collaborate with a lot of active academics, I also point out that CORT 113176 in animal models related to nervous system diseases like ALS, Alzheimer's disease, and alcohol use disorder show very positive results, all of which have been published in peer-reviewed journals and so forth. So this is a very interesting compound for us. We're particularly interested in its effect in ALS because not only did we see in the animal model a prevention of decline of the disease, we actually saw statistically significant improvement. This was a study done by one of our collaborators at the University of Buenos Aires in Argentina. Now, on the plus side, ALS is a terrible disease. Even the approved treatments don't do much, and it would be wonderful to be able to provide an improvement for these particular group of patients, a therapeutic for this group of patients. On the other side is, sadly, the trail to ALS is littered with many medications that did not work. So it's a hard call as to what to do. Now, you're a little bit ahead of us. We're just at the end of phase 1. We have a little stuff to go here, but probably by the next time we speak, we'll be able to give an answer to that question.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. So it looks like we have used your hour, hopefully in a productive way. Thank you very much for all tuning in, and we will talk to you in a quarter. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Again, that does conclude the call. We would like to thank everyone for your participation. You may now disconnect.